Hey, welcome back to Weld.com, home of TIG time. Hi, I'm Mr. TIG, and today we're playing with the machine and actually testing it, but we're going to do more than test it. We're going to actually do some welding on some real thin materials and some heavier materials. We're going to do both AC and DC. Now, in the DC function, we're going to weld extremely thin, 6 thousandths thick screen. And we're going to weld it to this lens. We're going to create our own gas lens, if you will. So what we thought we'd do is we found a machine that it looks like it'll do everything we want. It'll do thin, it'll do thick, AC, DC. I'm looking at the features on this machine, and I'd like to make it a Mr. TIG approved machine. But you're here to watch me test this. So until we finish the 2 segments, it's going to be part 1. We're going to do DC, and then we'll do part 2 as AC. So let me describe this, because this is actually pretty fabulous. When you look at it, this machine is a 320 amp machine. It's a single phase machine or a 3-phase machine. So there's a lot of people going to have an interest in this, and this is not for your beginner. This is the machine that pretty well does just about everything you could possibly want. Now we're going to weigh it in the next section, so I don't have the exact weight right now, but it's in the 50 pound category without all the accessories on it. But here's the specs on it. When I'm welding on AC, I can go from 10 to 320 amps. All right, well, we're going to see. On DC, I can go from 5 amps to 320 amps. So that's a broad range. It's a single range machine. So we're going to test that out. It's got pulsing features on it, and we'll get into that in the second segment. But the first part of this, all we're going to do is we're going to test it and see how fine we can tweak this machine down and do thin wall stainless. So 5 amps, that's what we would see in the aerospace industry. So if you get a machine that's 5 amps or even below, then that's pretty fine. So saying it's one thing, doing it is another. So I'm going to set this machine up, and I can tell you that there's been a lot of progress made over the years. These machines were not typically very friendly with the foot controls. So I've brought in a foot control. I've got an SSC foot control, and it's the premium foot control. These machines used to not read when you put the foot control, hooked it up to the power supply. It would only read live time, meaning that when you're welding, somebody could read the amps to you, but you couldn't limit it right here on the power supply. Well, now you can. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to set this up for DC thin wall welding. Okay, we're going to set this machine up, and the very first thing you want to do is you want to plug in the TIG torch. So look for the minus. And this is very consistent with the Everlast machines. This whole setup is very consistent. So go ahead, put in the DINs and turn it and tighten it. Now, this part right here is the connector for your foot control. So whichever one you've got, and of course we're using the premium. We're using the SSC control, but you'll see it's the standard pins that they use. Go ahead and put that back in, and it'll have a guide so you can't put it in incorrect. Okay, just make that finger tight. That's all you have to do. Okay, this is a quick disconnect. This is kind of a neat feature, and this is for your argon line. So this all comes off of your connector here, and plug it in. This is just your ground. So again, a DINS connector. So we've got this machine ready to go. Now, because of the complications on this machine, when I say that, you know, a lot of TIG machines just have a couple of features on it. This is a full-blown professional machine. It's got everything you can imagine. So I'm going to turn it on. And when I turn it on, you're going to hear a little bit of fan noise because it really does produce a lot of air in there. But we're going to do our first setup for thin wall stainless steel. So take a look at the front of this machine. There's all kinds of red lights and things like that. But the one thing I want you to go to first is I want you to go down here to this box. Okay, and make sure you're on HF TIG. That's high frequency TIG. Now, unless you want a touch start or a lift start, and that's the next feature, but go to HF TIG, because until you're on that, a lot of the features aren't going to come on. Okay, now we're going to scroll up and over and down through this little button right here, and watch what happens when I push this button. It jumped way over here, it jumped here, down to here, and back over here. So let's go through these functions, because every time one of these red lights comes on, you got to look at the function. Okay, so where are we at right now? We're at welding amps. What's the maximum you want out of this machine? So right now we've got it set at 60. Yeah, maybe I'll turn it down a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to turn it down to 50. So it's set at 50 amps. Now when I get ready to change and hit that button again, okay, I'm looking at downslope. Now because I have a foot control, I don't want anything else to screw with my, my amperage, so I'm controlling my own downslope. So I want downslope time to be 0. My ending amps, I want to be able to taper down to 5 amps. So that's what I've got there. And I hit my next one. My ending amps is 5 amps, and my next one is post flow. At the end of the weld, how many seconds do I want? And so my post flow is set at 5.0, 5 seconds. Okay, now when I hit this and I cycle over here pre-flow, be real cautious on the pre-flow. The pre-flow, if you hit your foot control and you got a pre-flow of 5 seconds, you're trying to get an arc started, it's not going to start. It's going to time out on you. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. About that time, you're going to lift your hood and an arc is going to start. So I don't like any pre-flow whatsoever. Getting back to starting amps, I'm doing thin wall, so I want to light off at 5 amps. That's the lowest this machine will go. Upslope, I've got 0 upslope. I control that with my foot control. Okay, and as I scroll through here, I double check, make sure I've got starting amps, upslope 0, welding amps max 50, downslope nothing, ending amps 5, and post flow 5 seconds. Okay, I want to save all this. I don't want anybody to screw with me at all. But take a look at these 3 white buttons. It's critical. Okay, make sure you're on DC. If you hit this button, you can bounce all over the place, and we'll get into that a little later, but be on DC. Also, I'm using a pedal. Make sure the red light is on the pedal. When I get over here, it's talking about TIG pulsing. I don't have any pulsing on right now. I will in a few minutes, but this particular test, I'm going to be DC straight. So, all it tells me to do is hold this button for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And when I let off, the green light came on. So my program number 1 is set. If I shut the machine off and turn it back on, it's going to go to my program number 1. So let's try it. Give it a couple, 3, 4, 5 seconds. Turn it back on. Okay, I'm at program number 1. If you notice, my amperage is still set. I'm still on high frequency TIG, pedal, pulsing off. I'm on DC. Everything is as I left it. Now, I played with this machine before. I put in memory. If you shut the machine off, it does all kinds of crazy things. It goes back to a default. It goes back to stick welding default. And you wonder why things aren't working correctly. So make sure you put a program in here that you're going to use. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get my gear on, and I'm going to do a little demo on thin wall stainless steel using these settings. Okay, I got a couple of parts that I'm going to weld up, and these are real life parts. Now what I have here is a 304 stainless, and it's been formed in a shape that we use it actually for a trail cup, and it's a trail cup that attaches to a TIG torch if we're going to weld anything from titanium to reactive alloys, or anything that just needs a little extra gas coverage. So these are the shells. They're 22 to 24 gauge. So if the machine hesitates at all, this weld just won't be successful. So I thought this is a perfect part to test the machine. So I'm just going to make one weld here just to see if it'll do the job. Okay, now I just welded on two different pieces here, just really test out this machine. Now the last thing that I was welding on was actually a perforated screen of stainless steel, and it's got two fine screen meshes in it, making it a gas lens. So I've got to weld it all the way around just to hold it all together, and eventually it goes into a cup or a cup body. So I did the screen welding. The screen is only 6/10, or I'm sorry, 6/1000. So I was welding at 6 to 7 amps. The machine stayed stable all the way through. Anyway, so I'll end up finishing this up and show you in one of my later programs what this looks like. Now this, being a trail cup, these things are almost impossible. You're trying to make a real lightweight trail cup. So this is lightweight stainless, and it'll polish out. It'll look like a mirror when it's finished. But you can tell by this weld right here that it is difficult. And I think I was using somewhere between 11 and 15 amps to weld it. Again, the machine was very stable. It, as far as I'm concerned, it passes the low end, and that's critical with me. So let's go ahead. I'm going to do some more stainless, and I want to put the pulser on. And I'm going to do a couple of sheets with the pulsing. Okay, now I've got some stainless steel that I'm actually going to overlap. It's 304 stainless, 16 gauge. I'm going to make an overlap or a lap weld. But I think what I want to do is I want to pulse it in. And like I say, with that material, I don't have to add filler to show you what the machine will do. So let's stick with memory number 1, and we're just going to modify it. So I'm going to take that material, use the rule of thumb, 1 amp per 1,000th of thickness, and set it at 62 amps. And the only changes that I'm really going to make on this is I'm going to scroll through, I'm going to turn the pulser on. So I can hit right here and it says standard AC/DC. So I'm running on DC right now. So I've just turned on the DC pulser, and that's only in this yellow area here. Okay, so let me scroll through it, and it says pulse on time. Okay, so you've got an amperage, you're going to give it a secondary amperage or a background current. How long do you want it to stay on that? And I'm just going to put it on at, I'm going to put it on 50%. Okay, so I've got 50% on time. My background current, I'm setting at 20, so I'm going to go from 60 to 20, 60 to 20, back and forth. Okay, now here's a cool feature, and this is the pulse frequency. Now, frequency is kind of misread many times. What we're doing is we're going back and forth, background current to regular current, background current, and we didn't used to have real good controls until we got to 100 hertz or 100 cycles per second. This machine will actually go up and back 500 cycles per second. So I'm going to go ahead and set it at 500, play with it. Now, I got to tell you, I already set this machine at 10 pulses per second, and it was pretty psychedelic. It was kind of hard to concentrate on the weld itself. It kind of reminded me of Woodstock. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn this all the way up. The maximum you can get out of this is 500 hertz. And so I'm scrolling. Okay, I'm at 500 hertz. Now I'm going to save everything. Hold it for 3 seconds. Release. Green light came on, so it saved my new settings. So again, I'm going to go ahead, put my gear on, go over here, and I'm just going to fusion weld with 500 hertz. So see you shortly. Okay, now the weld was just tight tightly focused with 500 hertz in there. Had I had no pulsing at all, the weld would have spread. It was still welded nice, but it was so focused, and you can't see the pulsing. You can certainly hear it. Sounds like a little bumblebee, but it just had very nice controls. You can see it just barely melted. Got good control all the way through. So this certainly passes the test of pulsing and low amp DC welding. You know, I'm not so terribly concerned about the higher amp DC welding. I'll do a little bit of that, but I just want to show you some of the more difficult features to deal with. So this will conclude part 1 of this machine in stainless steel. So thanks for watching TIG Time. I'm Mr. TIG.